Good afternoon and welcome to Tuesday Topics. Thank you for braving this cold weather and coming out today. My name is Rebecca Foose. I'm with the Friends and Foundation of the Rochester Public Library, and as always, I'm grateful to see all of you here today. Also would like to thank our committee and our board members for making these possible, as well as donors like yourselves. So thank you very much. We're continuing our series Tuesday Topics with today's topic, human trafficking. And to present that today, we have two individuals who are experts on this topic. The Honorable Renee Minarik, who is the New York Court of Claims Judge and the chair of the Rochester Regional Coalition Against Human Trafficking. And also with Renee is Peg Billyard, and she's with the Worker Justice Center and has been working on their trafficking project for many, many years, and is also a committee member of the Rochester Regional Coalition Against Human Trafficking. So we will start with Renee, and I welcome both of you to Tuesday Topics.
Thank you, Rebecca. The Rochester Regional Coalition Against Human Trafficking is a collaboration of service providers, not-for-profit organizations, and individuals passionate about the eradication of human trafficking through education, advocacy, and networking. Education is an important part of our mission, so we're grateful to the Friends and Foundation of the Rochester Public Library for this opportunity to speak with you all today. Now, the time allotted that we have today won't allow us to delve too deeply into the topic or cover some of the nuances. For example, child pornography and the intersection with human trafficking. But what we're going to do is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what's happening in Western New York on the issue, and then Peg is going to come up and going to give you what we call Human Trafficking 101. So she's just going to give you an overview of what the legal definition of human trafficking is. After that, I'm going to follow up with what you can do to assist us in the effort to fight human trafficking. 2 years ago, I was invited to a series of presentations in New York City. I was the only person from Western New York, and at that time. And up until that time, my knowledge about trafficking was informed by feature-length films like Taken. And, it happened in foreign countries to young women who were engaged in risky behavior, or, as I was reading, in third world countries where families would sell children to nefarious characters to survive. So it kind of shocked me that there was actually trafficking, people were trafficking in the United States. But since it was New York City, I accepted that because of the size of the city and the multicultural population, that trafficking was going to be an issue for them. So I would leave each presentation very grateful that I lived in little old Rochester, New York, where we were insulated from what I would refer to as third world issues. But it didn't take me long to figure out that we're not immune here in Western New York. The United States Attorney General's Office investigates traffickers residing in the city of Rochester, in the town of Brighton, in the town of Irondequoit, village of Leicester, Niagara Falls, and Buffalo. They've compiled cases that have accused these individuals of recruiting, marketing, and selling trafficked victims for prostitution, resulting in 16 cases in just this past year. Now, Peg's going to talk about how traffickers acquire their victims through force, fraud, and coercion, so she'll get into the details of that. But what you have to understand is these traffickers then take these individuals, drive them to our local hotels, or drive them somewhere else in the vicinity in Western New York, and sometimes even across state lines to engage in commercial sex acts. Most of these victims are under the age of 18. Some are even younger than 16. And some are involved in child pornography as well. But there were adults that were victimized this past year as well. Law enforcement knew about them because traffickers are so brazen that they advertise on the internet. Now, in addition to the efforts of the U.S. Attorney's Office, General's Office here in Western New York, the Monroe County District Attorney here has an assistant DA dedicated to prosecuting trafficking crimes as well. And the New York State court system established a statewide system of courts designed to target cases involving individuals charged with prostitution-related offenses, hoping to identify and assist sex trafficking victims by providing them with medical treatment and other critical services such as shelter, drug treatment, immigration assistance, and education and job opportunities. Rochester has one of those human trafficking courts as part of the Rochester City Court here, and Judge Ellen Yaknin is the one that presides over that court. Now, one of the things we are learning in the court system as we have more and more judges dealing with this issue is that the victims range the gamut, from the young person newly arrived in the area who barely speaks English with the promise of a job, to the 15-year-old that lives down the street in the expensive home with the manicured lawn. The difficult part of all this for law enforcement and the court system is that the victims come from any socioeconomic strata, making it difficult for us to focus our efforts and resources. So, Peg, I was wondering if you would talk to us legally about what is human trafficking. What are the components of that?
Thank you. I'm going to turn on the mic here. I'm much more comfortable on the ground than I am in the air. Here you go. My name is Peg Billyard. I'm with the Worker Justice Center of New York. We were, before our merger with a legal program in the Hudson Valley, we were Farm Worker Legal Services of New York. Farm Worker Legal Services represents immigrant and migrant workers, agricultural workers that come to New York State to pick our crops. During our long history of providing wage and employment representation, we found that there was a lot of what they call wage theft. And in 1996, we started to see a pattern of not just wage theft, but of really imprisoning workers to work on the farm. Right here in Alba, the first case of human trafficking that was prosecuted happened right here in Rochester through our outreach work with the farm workers. So we've had a long history. We started a human trafficking project. We've been funded by the federal and state government to do outreach, to talk about labor trafficking in the farm worker community. But we're also seeing that it intersects with trafficking for sex, because on some of the farms there are women who, like Renee said, the trafficker brings them to the farms and provides services to other workers. A lot of our tips come from workers who see that this is not right, and so they contact us and we investigate. I do want to talk a little bit about what human trafficking is. So I'm just going to give you the definition of human trafficking. What the federal defines as severe forms of trafficking. So it isn't just trafficking, just a minor exploitation, which I don't see how it can be minor, but so they define it as a severe form of trafficking. And sex trafficking is a commercial sex act induced by force, fraud, or coercion. And that is for a person over the age of 18. So there's 3 elements that have to be proven. So we're going to get into elements in a little bit, but let me finish with the rest of this definition. Or in which the person induced to perform such a sex act had not attained the age of 18. So if a child is induced into some kind of sex act for a commercial purpose, they consider that that person is being trafficked. Just as a young person doesn't have the ability to consent to a sex act, means that they should not be arrested for prostitution. And that was the real sticking point for many years in the law. If someone was arrested under the age of 18, they could be arrested for prostitution, even though they weren't legally able to give consent. So the human trafficking laws changed the perception of prostitution for those under the age of 18. For labor, it is the recruitment, harboring, provisioning, or obtaining of a person for labor for services through the use of, and I'm going to say it again, force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, or slavery. So that is that's the definition of trafficking. I just want to get into a couple of things. The elements of trafficking. Thank you. The process. They have to have 3 elements to prove trafficking, and that's been difficult when traffickers are prosecuted by the criminal courts. And that is there's process, means, and the end. So the process is the recruitment, harboring, moving, or obtaining of persons. So what this doesn't mean is that there has to be there's kidnapping. Kidnapping could be a part of it. But it's just moving a person or providing that person to someone else. Harboring the person, keeping them locked in their house. The means, by force, fraud, or coercion. And then the ends. And the ends is for some sort of monetary end. So like debt bondage, slavery, or activity in the sex trade. Oops. Okay, the term coercion means threats of serious harm or physical restraint against any person. We have seen this over and over again. The case that I was talking about in Albion, it's called the Maria Garcia case, if anybody wants to look that up. They actually locked farm workers in their house and had armed guards patrolling the grounds so that they could not leave. So that is a threat of physical harm. It is also any scheme or plan or pattern intended to cause a person to believe that failure to perform an act would result in serious harm or physical restraint against any person. What we see on some of the local farms when there is labor trafficking is that they say, because they come from a small town maybe in Mexico, they say, we know where your family is and we will do something to them if you turn us in or talk to somebody or not perform the labor that they want. So this is a very real thing here in Western New York. It really happens. And then the abuse or threatened abuse by the legal system. And what that means is that and this again happens, they take the passport from somebody and they say, if you don't perform like we want you to do, or if you tell somebody, we will turn you into immigration. You will be deported. Now, many of these workers have been here for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And it's a real threat if they are told that they would be turned into immigration and deported. So they would lose their family. If you're here working, you have children who are U.S. citizens, they can be deported. Children are caught between whether they leave with a parent or they stay with some other relatives or people here in the States. These workers have to make a very difficult decision on what they're going to do. They also get, arrested, and they get put in detentions, like the Batavia Detention Center. So it's a real threat to workers, and it can be used by traffickers. Now, obviously, we know what slavery is and involuntary servitude, but I want to talk about debt bondage. That happens a lot when a worker is looking to have work on a farm and they're in Mexico. Maybe they have been displaced from their land by multinational corporation who has taken their land or the state, and so they come up here. They want to come here to work on the farms. And so what they do is somebody says, well, I can get you across the border for $2,000. So they say, okay, but I don't have $2,000. They said, don't worry, you'll get a job in New York State, it'll pay you $12 an hour, and you will be happy, and we will be happy, and the farm will provide housing, and you can come here. And so they do that. And then suddenly they find out that $2,000 is, well, there's $1,000 more for the, in Arizona, the trailer in Arizona. And there's $1,000 more for getting there to here. And there's $1,000 more. And suddenly they've racked up $10,000 to maybe $15,000 in debt. And then they're told, you can't leave here until it gets paid. They can't be moved around. So that is, debt bondage. That happens. That happens all of the time. I want to talk a little bit about smuggling and trafficking because they're very different things, but they intersect when it comes to trafficking. If you're smuggled, in my example just now, somebody said, well, for $2,000, I'll get you across the border. I'll smuggle you across the border. That is a crime against the state because it's a crime on immigration. You're not allowed to come across the border without proper documentation. But once they get here and they're told, either you work in this restaurant as a prostitute, or where we can send you out, we're going to harm your family, where the job you were promised isn't there. It becomes trafficking once that happens, once those other elements come up. So what I have on the back table, this card is talks about trafficking indicators and the difference between trafficking and smuggling. So you might want to take that. There's other materials back there. For instance, I have one of our folders that's about our program, Worker Justice Center. And inside are indicators of trafficking. So what happens is that people in the community also come in contact with trafficking victims, they just don't know it. When you go to a restaurant or some kind of personal services, the person may be in a debt bondage situation and you don't know it, but there are indicators. And these indicators will help you, just suspicious. We don't ask you to investigate. You may call us. We will send out a trafficking specialist and who will investigate. So I urge you to take a look at this. The second thing I brought, which I did not put on the table, is really a lot of information. It comes right off the internet, right from the federal government. And this has indicators of trafficking, but it also has talk about children, sexual exploitation, labor exploitation, domestic servitude, begging and petty crimes, and then some promising practices, which we have put into effect with the regional council, regional coalition, is the promising practices of a community-based program that goes out and really brings the information to everybody and has a community response. So that's it. Did I miss anything? All right, good.
So what can we do? Coalition has representatives of different agencies and organizations like PEG that work to assist victims or law enforcement every day. Now, I'm not a service provider. However, if, like me, you are interested in supporting the effort to abolish trafficking, there are some things you can do. You can educate yourself. Check out our website. Read up on what's happening. You can take the resources that PEG is offering you. We do have a resource list on the website, books, movies, news articles, and legislation. Take a book out of your friendly neighborhood public library. I know we have actually done the search here. We've plugged in trafficking and come up with resources that the library already has. You can search human trafficking on the web as well, and you can find numerous resources from, example, international agencies like Polaris. They're a wealth of information. You can advocate for victims. Ask your state legislators, or at least investigate for yourself, where they stand on the issue. Human trafficking is one part of Governor Cuomo's equality agenda. Do you know where your representative stands on that issue? If you like where that representative stands, send them a letter and thank them. If you don't like it, write them a letter and tell them why you think they need to change that stand. You can network with people. It can be as easy as a casual conversation with your medical provider next time you're in the office. Take Peg's card that has the indicators on it and say to the medical provider, would you know what a victim looked like if they walked into your office? They might not. You'd be amazed at how many people in the medical profession don't quite understand the issue yet, and like the court system, are beginning to educate themselves as to what a potential victim might be experiencing, so that then we can alert people who are trained in the trafficking area to provide them with the services that they need. Let's see. Invite your friends to your home. This was the other one. For a screening of one of the documentaries that are available. Make it a potluck supper. Not My Life is one of the documentaries that we've used, but there are others listed on our website. And if you have a problem procuring one for such an event, give us a call. We'll help find a copy for you. Now, if you want to assist directly, you can donate a CAT pack, C-A-H-T, CAT, Coalition Against Human Trafficking pack. It's a backpack containing toiletries and clothing that will be given to our local agencies that have daily contact with the most vulnerable individuals in our population. The Rochester Regional Coalition Against Human Trafficking has brochures in the back that talk about what it takes to make a CAT pack and where you can drop them off. Also in the back is information about membership in the coalition. We are not a 501c3. We're a loose-based coalition of interested individuals, and as I said earlier, not-for-profit agencies that deal directly with the population, as well as corporations that deal with trafficking issues themselves. So, Peg and I are willing to take some questions at this point. Anything goes. You can talk to us about anything, and if we don't have the answer, we will find it for you.
So I'd like to, again, thank you both very, very much for raising our awareness and attention to this important topic. I appreciate you all being here and your interest in this as well. Thank you very much for coming today.